Today we will discuss whether to use underline, italics, or quotation marks when referencing a title within a paper. This is one of the most confusing topics because there are so many options. Although some publishing houses have their own specific rules for this matter, it is important to know the standard MLA guidelines about punctuating titles within a paper. Italics are the most commonly used method when it comes to punctuating titles. In MLA format, one should use italics to punctuate the following types of titles: book titles, names of magazines and newspapers, album titles, television and radio programs, film and play titles, encyclopedias, comic strips, works of art, and websites. In general, italics are most likely used for longer works. On the screen, you will see that there is an example of a sentence that requires a title to be italicized within the sentence. Cosmopolitan must be italicized because it is the title of a magazine. Underlining is ultimately used for the same kinds of titles that use italicization. One would underline everything in handwritten paper which they would italicize in a typed paper. Refer to the list of works that need to be italicized and use this list to learn what should be underlined within a handwritten paper. As a writer transitions from handwriting papers to typed papers, the question of whether or not to use italicization or underline for a title can become confusing. Remember, only use underline in a handwritten paper. In a typed paper, apply the rules that we talked about to italicize. Lastly, we should discuss what kinds of titles need to be put within quotation marks. Generally, quotation marks are used to punctuate titles of shorter works. The list of titles that need to be put inside of quotation marks is as follows: short poems, short stories, titles of essays, song titles, commercials, individual television shows, a chapter in a book, or titles of an article within a newspaper or magazine. Titles that require quotation marks can fall into sentences that also require titles with italicization, if the author is referring to a smaller piece within the larger piece of work. Don't let this confuse you. You will see an example of this on the screen. Here you can see that Mickey Mouse Clubhouse is italicized because that is a television series, and Popstar Mini is put into quotation marks because that is a specific episode of the television series. Now let's test our knowledge on the use of punctuation of titles and practice on some examples. Here I will first display a sentence that has no punctuation at all. Take a minute to read the sentence and figure out what would be the best method of punctuation for titles within the sentence. In the first example, 1989 becomes italicized because it is an album title, and Bad Blood is put into quotations because it is the name of a song. Next, Dazed and Confused is italicized because it is a movie title. Lastly, The Telltale Heart is put into quotation marks because it is a short story. Remember, if you were handwriting these, Dazed and Confused and 1989 would be underlined. Looking at these examples, you can see how leaving out punctuation when stating a title can cause confusion within a sentence. If the title is not punctuated correctly, it does not stand out clearly in the sentence. Microsoft Word will not automatically recognize this mistake, so it is important for a writer to know whether to use underline, italicize, or quotation marks. Here is my works cited.